This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. And my guest today is Lauren Bell. And Lauren has been working as a nurse, a holistic therapist as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
And she's sort of changing things up a little bit and doing coaching. And, one of the things I love about coaching is that we as individuals can learn so much more about ourselves when we listen to other people because our stories sort of like intertwine with each other. And you started this, Lauren, because of what you're calling like healthcare burnout. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, about 7 years ago, I guess that's really when it all sort of accumulated. But really, I mean, it was the way I was running my life and just, doing too much for everybody, not looking after myself. I had kids, I was studying, I took on extra responsibilities at work. I had high standards and high ideals that I really wanted to achieve. And it soon became apparent that really I wasn't doing that. I wasn't getting what I wanted done. And really, rather than really reflecting on it, reaching out for help and those types of things, I started to, I guess I was being very critical of myself and feeling like I was failing. I was blaming everybody else as well. And it was just a real downward spiral, really. And, I was running on empty. I was exhausted. And basically, it wasn't until after I sort of hit rock bottom that I could look back and go, oh, that's actually really burnt out. I don't think you're in it when you're in it. It's sort of afterwards. But now I'm really passionate about helping others to see it sooner, to help reflect on what they really want in their heart, what's really driving them. And often it's these high standards and doing things for everyone else without looking after ourselves. We're forgetting ourselves, neglecting ourselves, and that can lead to it too. So I really want to raise our value, for ourselves, but also as a profile too, I think. I think we need to be valued a lot more.
Well, I know women tend to push themselves a little harder than men. And I'm not saying men don't push themselves because there are quite a few of them who are going through burnout as well. But as a woman, especially if you're a mom, if you're working full time, if you're trying to find that little niche for yourself, whether it's read a book, take a bubble bath, whatever it is, or go to school, and I did the same thing. You think you're doing all the right things, and then sometimes it just creeps up on you, and it's like you just don't feel well. You don't feel well mentally, physically, and the people around you have accepted this change in you, but you haven't even seen it. So when you started to feel this burnout, were you ready to give up a few things so that you could slow down?
Yeah, I mean, I just knew I was very unhappy. My family did know as well, as you said. And, they were copping the brunt of it really because, of course, I felt safe with them. So, I would come home and really they did cop it because the littlest things would set me off. The kids they were young, they were 8, 10 and 12 type thing. And, they'd leave their dishes all over the sink or whatever. And, just those little things. But it was like the camel that broke what's the saying? The straw that broke the camel's back.
Right.
Just one thing too much. And I even remember, standing out at the clothesline, hanging the clothes on the line and crying because it just felt too much. Like it was all of that. So my family were actually really aware. My partner was really supportive, but I don't think we really understood what was really going on. He wanted me to leave. And actually, eventually that's what I did do. I left that workplace and I went back to uni as well. I'd put on hold a counselling post-grad. And so I went back and completed that and then did some counselling. And then from the counselling and with nursing, I sort of thought, you know what, we're helping people just to get back to normal. And that's when I was inspired by coaching to empower people to go that next step. Often we're doing quite well in many parts of our lives, but there's one part that's, that thorn in our side that we just want to actually get going a lot better. And if we did that, that would make a big difference. And so that's what I love, helping people to sort of really step into their potential. And I think that's why what I did too, I sort of listened to my heart. I stopped and went, what do I really want? And that's when I started to see that I'd been caught up in all of these false beliefs that I had to earn money in a certain way and I had to work so many hours and, I had to sort of fit into the box. But actually, when I stepped outside of the box, it was so freeing.
It's interesting because we put those conditions on ourselves more than anybody else. I know when I was still in corporate America, I was working 50, 60 hours a week. They wanted me to leave at 40, but I just saw all these things that had to get done. I wanted to prove myself to me, let alone to everybody around me. But I was getting mad as I was doing it. It was like, why am I here? Everybody else went home. Why
Yeah.
am I coming in on the weekend when I'm not supposed to be here and everybody else is having fun? And almost like yourself, my family saw it. In fact, my youngest son was driving me home from work one day and he said, "You're really depressed." And I looked over at him and I said, "Oh, no, I'm not." And he goes, "Tell me one thing that you liked today." And I started crying because I
Yeah.
couldn't think of one thing. And that's when I sort of like knew that was like, okay, I get it. So there are a lot of our listeners out there, whether they're working from home, and so many people think, oh, working from home is the answer, but we're finding out that it's not for a lot of people.
No.
Um, so how do you in particular help your clients when they come to you and they say, I know I got to change my life, but I really can't?
Yeah. Well, I think number one, I always have to meet people where they're at. And that ranges from people who are very, very burned out and just, not really coping, with other people who are like, I want to change my life and transition into a new job or a new, career path, and they're exploring those ideas. So there's part of that, but it is all about helping us to take responsibility. And I think for ourselves, and I think that's what I realized was I was being so responsible for everybody else, but not for myself, not for all the things that weren't going well in my life. And as I take responsibility, that actually is the empowering part, because that gives me choices now. So, even with, say, the pandemic, our responsibility to that is that, well, how do I react in it? What am I saying about it? What am I making that mean for me? And so helping us to value ourselves. So I think that it really does start inside, that we must start with us first and be responsible for everything that's going on in our life. So if something's not looking good, not working for you, what's going on for it? Or even small things. So as I use a technique called emotional freedom technique, or tapping, and that helps us to really feel our feelings and to actually honor them rather than push them down and ignore them, because that's also a big cause of illness and other pathologies that come out within us, whether it's in our mental health or in our physical health or our emotional health. And so when we really acknowledge those feelings, then we can start to accept. And when we're in an accepting place, then we're in a more peaceful place. And then from that, we can sometimes say, okay, I was triggered by, she said that to me, or that happened and I got upset. So what's going on within me? So that's ultimately what I do. It's really what's happening in me, and not blaming myself for it or not trying to deny it. Actually honoring it and owning it, and then being able to release the emotion from it, allows me to be a lot more emotionally intelligent and a lot more respectful to myself and to others.
Sure. Well, and we have to become honest with ourselves. I know I look back now and I can definitely say that I was an imposter for a good part of my life, because I denied all the things that were hurting me. If somebody would say to me, part of it is that, you know, you're trying to be mother, wife, daughter, you're trying to work yourself up at work and do all these things. And you've decided to join all these women's groups. Are they making you happy, or are you doing it because you want to do it? And I would always say, oh no, I love doing it. And yet I'd get in the car to go to work, and all I could think about is, I don't want to go. And then I'd get to work and I think about all things I have to do when I get home. And so I kept piling it on top of myself. When I started podcasting and talking to coaches, even though you basically, guide us all in the same way, it's sometimes just hearing your story. What
Yeah.
happened to you that all of a sudden I can sit back and go, wow, yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
So when you have a client, when they come to you, one of the things that I find is good for me when something is bothering me is to say to myself, where is it hurting me internally?
Yeah.
Is that
And
something that you do?
yeah, totally. And that's that, because what we're doing then is we're coming back into the now moment, as opposed to, you were saying there's so many things you want to do. Like, that's what's all those sayings, give a busy person the job. Like, we'll never stop doing. There's so many things to do. And the more we have to do, the more we'll stack on. Whereas when we come back into the moment, that's when we can start to really feel, well, where is it inside me? What am I feeling? And just the coming back into presence, into our body, to feeling it, actually slows down our thinking too. And that's, I wrote a chapter it was called the Anxiety Relief Handbook, and my chapter was on professional anxiety, unleashing the greatness within. But ultimately, when we've got rapid thinking and we're really stressed and we can't, we actually can't really function. We're actually in fight and flight. By tuning into our body, so a lot of people speak about, taking deep breaths and those types of things, and that's to slow us down. So our body is vibrating as an energy field at a much slower rate than our thoughts are. So just focusing on our body helps us to slow down even. But yeah, it's really important to then tune in, and that helps us with that honesty to see where in our body is it hurting, and what does it feel like. And that's why then I use tapping to help release that feeling. So to release the feeling and the thoughts that go with it. But one of my very clever coaches taught me that, yes, it is the feeling that's really important, because for every feeling that we have in our body, and if we can label it even as an emotion, so we've got the feeling, like the sensation, maybe pressure, maybe tightness, maybe heaviness, or it could be butterflies, or, it could be something positive too. It could be heart opening or expansion or something like that. But those feelings, we might label them as joy or sadness or grief or anger or whatever. There's not that many emotions really. But for each emotion, there could be a billion thoughts or meanings that we've made of it, So following the feeling, coming back down into the feeling is really great.
So over the last couple of years with the pandemic, we know that, medical personnel, and I'm not just talking doctors and nurses, I'm talking aides and even the cleaning crews, in all these facilities. Um, you've all been really overworked. And sometimes you've had a choice, but most of the time you didn't. Um, and from what I've heard from a lot of doctors and nurses that I've worked with, they tell me that certain institutions really have told them to leave their emotions at home because they have a job to do. But when you're working and watching people who are alone, who are very ill, who are dying, and there's nothing you can do other than maybe give them some comfort, although basically you were told to leave that at the door. How do you do your job as a professional without, I would go crazy. I probably have been standing in the ER screaming my head off.
Yeah. Well, You know, that's not the area that I work in. So I have been a little bit sheltered from that. I work in operating theatre, and our theatres closed. It was, you know, all elective surgery was closed. So it was a different scenario for me. But I think that's what the problem, you know, people who do caring generally, and the people that I work with, are heart-centered. So they
Right.
can't leave their emotions at the
Right.
door. One thing that helped me though was it is about compassion, and it's about compassion for ourselves. It's about compassion for, you know, our patients and our fellow colleagues who are also completely stressed. Our workplaces aren't always, you know, they can be toxic, really.
Right.
But one of the things that really helped me was understanding the difference between sympathy, empathy, empathic distress, and compassion. And I'm going to explain a little visual, because it was the visual that helped me. So a lot of nurses and a lot of caring professionals, very heart-centered, very empathic, you know, they really feel what's going on for others, and it really hurts us. So that's where people struggle a little bit with boundaries, I think, because it's a little bit hard always to know, well, what's mine and what's yours. And so it's partly, that's part of the empowerment work that we do. But this understanding about the difference between sympathy, empathy, empathic distress, and compassion. So imagine someone's really hurt and upset. They're like they're in a ditch. So imagine them sitting on the bottom of the ditch. And the person who's being sympathetic is like looking over the side of the ditch and saying, oh, that looks terrible. Oh, you poor thing. The empathy is the person who's sitting in the ditch with the person, they've sort of got their arm around them. Empathic distress is when they're no longer functional and able to help that person in the ditch, and they're now over to the side and they're just overwhelmed and overcome by it all. And compassion is out the other side of the ditch with a ladder and saying, okay, here you go. So you're not actually getting entangled into all the hurt and the drama, but you're still holding that loving, compassionate space for the person and sort of helping them to lead the way. So that's something that I find is a really good way to assess, like, well, where are you? And I mean, we all probably have times when we're at all of those
Sure.
things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. But to realize that going towards compassion for ourselves, compassion for everyone else too, is really, really important. And most of us are really wanting the same thing. We all want to be loved and accepted. We all want peace. We all want kindness. We all want, you know, those same things. And so I think ultimately having that respect to know that we're all different, but we're all the same too.
Right.
So honoring that differences of everyone.
So why do you think in the last 15, 20 years, coaching has really grown as an industry? Um, in fact, I was surprised last year. I was doing a study on coaching, and I really did not expect to see as many people changing their career patterns to coaching. Um, but I understand personally why it's happening. But what happened in the year 2000 and since that we are now saying, wait a second, I'm not happy anymore. I have to figure out what's going on. Whereas prior to that, we just dealt with it and probably got ill from it.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I think it's to do with our consciousness. So as we're evolving as a consciousness and becoming more aware of ourselves and what's going on, we are realizing that we're not happy. And the fastest and quickest way to move somewhere to a better place is by having someone who's already done it or can help lead you, guide you. And you are still doing the work. So a coach asks, you know, the great questions to keep moving you forward. Or like the coaching that I do, I actually offer the holistic therapy inside it. Then we're actually healing up those patterns and programming that have been unconscious, that have been driving us, that we've just really been on automatic pilot, but we're starting to wake up to it. And so once something was unconscious becomes conscious, it can no longer become unconscious again. Like we've now shined the light on it, so we see it differently. And from that, that's where the empowerment comes in, because we can start to make choices that are different. And I think a lot of it is too valuing. And this is what I say, I'm a wealth and wellness coach, and the reason I say wealth is because looking at wealth from a more holistic perspective,
Sure.
wealth in health, in money, but also in opportunities, in career, in creativity. It doesn't matter. Whatever is personal for you is the concept of it. But I also love the idea of I'm actually a worth coach, or a worthiness coach. And, this pandemic really, not pandemic, I mean, I'm just using the same word there, but
Right.
the idea that so many people have this, I'm not good enough. And so that's the pandemic that I was referring to there. I'm not good enough is so universal. But as we step into the worthiness of who we are, then we're all good enough, and we're all beautiful, amazing individual, and we all are here for a purpose. And, whether it's something huge, or whether it's because you love tending to the garden and you have that connection with nature in that way, it doesn't matter. We're all unique, and we all can shine and be authentic and follow. That's what we need to do. Follow our passion, follow our joy, instead of just going in the grind of work, like what you were saying. We've just done it. We've sort of been programmed,
Right.
and it's not that we've been programmed maliciously or whatever. That's just how, you look back at evolution,
Right.
and exactly. So bringing back to the original statement, I think we're at that point in consciousness where we're really starting to question, what am I doing this for? And I think the pandemic, and I'm talking about the pandemic this time, I think it all made us go, hang on, why am I working so hard? Why do I have this big mortgage? Why am I, it's not making me happy. What's the point?
It's interesting. I started working with a client about 2 months ago, and in my eyes, she has it all. Okay. She's earned fame, she's earned fortune. Um, and yet, as we talked together, I kept hearing from her that she didn't feel worthy, that she wasn't good enough. Why would anyone want to hear her? And I was like sitting back, like, well, I want to hear you because I just think, you're perfect. And as I was thinking those thoughts, I thought, wow, we're human. That's why she thinks those thoughts. You can have all the awards in the world, but if you don't feel it internally, okay, that they mean something and that you were good enough to get them, then it doesn't make any difference that you have a wall of trophies. Um, and so I even asked her, I said, so you've been in TV, so do you have awards? And she goes, I put them all away. And I said, why? And she said, I didn't earn them. And I said, okay. Um, and we talked about why she felt she didn't earn them. But as she started talking about it, then she said, wait a second, I did.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, do you want to bring those trophies out? And she said, oh no. She said, now knowing that I earned them, I can start moving on. And
Yeah.
in 2 months, our conversations have totally changed. Um, and it's only me asking her questions, like, explain that to me.
Mm.
And again, we can sit on one side of the screen, whether it be the TV or in the movie theater, and we can assume that all those people on the screen, they've got it made. And the reality of it is, we could have it made too, but we have to decide. And I think you brought it up. What is our purpose?
Yeah. 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 And one thing that really helped me, and this is something I teach a lot, is, and this came through from Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote Conversations with God books. But he was talking about, who do you love being? And so for a while, so I have my coaching business and I'm still nursing. And for a little while there, I was sort of judging, I wanted to be further ahead in my coaching. And so I was sort of judging myself that, I wasn't really there yet. And then listening to Neale Donald Walsh and who do you love being, I thought, okay, well, who do I love being? Well, I love teaching, I love learning, I love sharing my wisdom, I love caring for people, I love helping people, I love being kind and respectful. And, I just listed, I love creativity. And then I thought, oh, well, I can do that when I'm nursing. I can do that when I'm coaching. I can do that when I'm in the shopping center.
Right. Exactly.
And so that was so freeing. And so that idea of, well, who do you love being? And I think that's your purpose, because then you can expand it more and more and more and really follow all of those things that gives you more of those qualities, those traits that you love being. And, we are a human being, not a human doing. And, to loop it back to the doing part, often the doing is us trying to prove to ourselves, like you said, or prove to others. And we're trying to show that we're accepted and worthy. So really, the idea of understanding who we're being and then following that, expanding that, living that authentically, that's all we have to do. It makes it
And
sound very simple, but
well,
yeah.
and for our listeners, you know, you put it very simply, that's all we have to do, but we can do it if we just take that step back. And we're not going to be happy 24/7. You know, um, I have shared this numerous times, but probably about 15 years ago, um, it was on Christmas Day, and it was just my husband and my son. We had no family in the area, and I was feeling really sorry for myself. I made this huge meal. They ate it in 30 seconds. We weren't this Hallmark family. And as I sat in my bedroom crying later in the day, um, I put something out on Facebook, and my oldest brother saw it, and he picked up the phone and called me, and he said, "Take that off of Facebook." And I said, "Why? That's how I feel." And I was arguing with him about it. But the bottom line was, he finally convinced me. It wasn't so much about taking it off of Facebook, it was taking it out of my mind. What could you do to make yourself happy right now? Okay,
Yeah.
none of us are together. Yeah. One's in California, one was in New York, one was, somewhere else. He said, "So you could have gotten the phone and called us. You could have written us each." And when he started giving me this list, I started laughing. It's like, I can make myself happy. And I have used that over and over again. Um, and again, when you're really down and out about something, yeah, you're not going to flip the switch like that. But if you know that it's there, you can keep working at it. And I think that's what coaching and being mindful is really all about.
Yeah. And I think it's a beautiful story, and it does show us how our thoughts actually are creating so much of our feelings inside. So we can work on it the other way. We can come back to our feelings, to our center, to expand that place in our heart. And you hear people talk about using gratitude. So all of the things that you already have to be grateful. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to breathe this air. I'm grateful to look out my window and see a beautiful tree. I'm grateful for my doggy that's lying beside my feet here, my family. And so as we keep extending it, we can't actually be depressed and grateful at the same time. So there is actually a lot of merit in being grateful. But I agree with you. We're not going to wake up happy every day. And in fact, even just in recent times, I've sort of woken up different every day. And someone pointed me to the poem by Rumi called The Guest House. Have you ever heard that one?
I'm not sure.
And I can't really repeat it. It's beautiful though. It's really worth looking up, but it's
Okay.
like basically saying that each morning when you wake up, there could be a different guest in your house, but it's not you. And that's the other part. It's just, that's how you're feeling. And often we might be feeling grief, but we also can be feeling joy at the same time. We have numerous feelings always going on. We're not one or the other. And our feelings don't really define us. They're just giving us expression of us being the human being. It's just that we've narrowed what's acceptable, but really that's not, that's limiting us. That's our emotions are important, and they give us a lot of clues and insights.
Sure.
But yeah, often we can loop it back to what are we thinking, and what's my loop of thinking, and what am I making it mean? And like you did, you changed it to be able to actually be really grateful that you have these things.
And when you mention grief, so many of us don't understand that when we're grieving, we're still having joyful moments. Um, I was a very young child when my mother's mother passed away, and I wasn't allowed to go to the funeral, but I was at a family gathering, and one minute I saw everybody crying, next minute they were laughing and telling jokes. And I remember I went up to my mother, my hands were on my hips. I was really upset. And I said, "How can you be laughing? Your mother died." And that made her laugh even more. It was like, who are you to tell me?
Yeah.
And that was my first understanding that yes, you can be grieving, but you can also be happy about something. And a lot of us don't give ourselves that opportunity. We say, "Oh no, I'm supposed to be grieving right now, so I better not laugh, I better not smile, I better not like something." Is that something that you've dealt with in your practice as well?
Yeah. Yeah. eh, I think that's exactly right. I often talk about the different parts of us that we have. We have these parts. So like the part of us that could be grieving, part of us that's grateful, part of us that's feeling, joyful, part of us that's really angry, all of these parts. And when we can actually come and identify these parts and again, own them and see them and love them instead of denying them. So one of the things, I think this is a good way of explaining it too, is a lot of the caring professionals that I work with, they don't like to be seen as selfish. And so that's part of why the self-care and all of those things is often hard for them. But actually, we all have moments when and if someone called them selfish, they would adamantly deny it. I'm not selfish. No way am I selfish. But we always have parts of us that are really selfish and selfless. And so once we get to own, oh, yeah, I can be selfish. Of course I can be. I'm a human being. And we love that part of us that can be selfish, then we're also loving that part of us that's selfless. And if someone actually said something to you about it, well, you would say, yeah, actually, at times I can be that way. And I also am very selfless. And we're no longer defended about it. And what's really interesting is once we stop defending and denying those parts of ourselves, it's like the people outside there stop poking the button anyway,
Right.
and saying that you're selfish. Like you'll no longer end up having people saying that. Or if they did, I guess it just goes over your head. You don't attach to it. So you don't try and defend it and say, no, that's not me. So yeah, I think owning all of these emotions. And, that's one of the things about women, it's always been women are so emotional. And, I think that's actually a really beautiful trait. And all of us, of course, masculine and feminine traits within us. So we're not just talking any one particular gender or anything like
Sure.
that here. This is more that emotional range that in the past they've said, oh, that's woman, hysterical, all of those things,
Right.
which is ridiculous, and as we own more and more that we can have all of this range, I think it gives us more expression as humans, and we can connect more honestly and deeply and truthfully. And when we're really truthful and expressing truthfully, that actually is really heart opening too, because it's the censorship of ourselves that feels really heartbreaking.
How wonderful. So you say that you've discovered 5 keys to all this. What are those 5 keys?
Yeah, so I call it my soaring free method, just because I sort of, unpacked, well, what did I do when I hit that rock bottom? And so the first part was, yeah, starts with self. So it's always that self first in terms of like self-honesty. So the first key is honesty, and you mentioned that earlier. And it was like, what am I doing? What does my heart really want? Because our heart actually knows. It's our brain, where we try to work it out intellectually, but that's the bit that says, go and do this job. You need to work these hours. You need to earn this income. That's, whereas our heart's saying, no, I want to do this. And that's the part that makes us really happy. So dropping into our heart, it's the part that has the answers. So being honest about that. So really reflecting honestly, am I happy? Is this what brings me joy? What do I need more of in my life? All of those types of things. The second key is responsibility. So we've talked about that too. So it's taking responsibility for everything that goes on in my life and how I'm reacting to it, what I'm making it mean. And if it's, not something that I like, to actually do something about it. And so then that brings in boundaries as well. So having boundaries, being able to say no, being able to know that I'm valuable. And yes, the world has a shortage of caring professionals, but I also have a family. And, if you can be working so hard and your children have grown up and you've missed out on all of that, I actually think that once again, that's part of our life purpose, is really to love and to connect. And so just working so hard doesn't actually give that to you, and it doesn't make you a good person to your loved ones either. And then the next one is beliefs. So looking at your beliefs and seeing, well, are they empowering or are they disempowering? And if they're not empowering for you, then change them, because once we shine the light of awareness on it, then we can change them. And so the fifth key is knowledge, which for me was particularly using tools to support me. So things like mindfulness, things like the tapping, because then I can look at those disempowering beliefs and use tapping to change them. So they all sort of work together, but ultimately they were sort of the 5 keys that when I opened them up and explored them and, continually worked through them. So self-confidence and value and worthiness and being deserving and speaking my truth and all of those things are all sort of nested within this. But they were the 5 keys that really helped me and allowed me to really move into a life where I feel like I'm soaring free. Like my life it's still a work in progress.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, but I love my life. I love how it's unfolding. And I'm actually going through a little bit of a period of just pulling back in at the moment and just really reassessing too. So just because I said this is what I'm going to do, it's not tattooed on my forehead.
Yeah.
It actually, it might be time to start, turning the wheel a little bit
Right.
again.
I totally understand that, because in the fall of 2021, I made a commitment to myself that I was going to do X amount of podcasts per week. I mean, I was really revving it up and I was doing it. And by the end of the year, I was ill, and I blamed it on everything else other than my work. And as I was doing that, laying in the ER, I thought to myself, who am I kidding? I want to do what I'm doing, but did I have to do it at that pace? And it was like this revelation. It was like, no, you're not in competition with anybody. And so the next day when I was home, I got on my computer and everybody that I had scheduled, I said, I've got to move you. And I started moving people. And it was a revelation that not one person complained. And it was like, oh, I can do this, so taking control is really, really important. How can our listeners find you, Lauren, if they want to find out more about you or understand some of the things in depth that you're doing?
Yeah, great. Thank you. laurenbell.com.au. So I'm in Australia. And so Lauren, Lauren, Bell, BELL.com.au for Australia. So that's my website. So that's probably the easiest. Or you can reach me on, LinkedIn or Facebook. LinkedIn and Instagram, I'm Lauren D. Bell, and Facebook, I just Lauren Bell. So those things. But yeah, my website's probably the easiest.
Okay, we'll make sure we have all those links in the show notes. That's important.
We do have, and I was thinking about it, we have a nursing seminar coming up, which is actually very, very, it's coming up at the end of April. So for the US audience, it would be the 28th and the 30th. No, it's the 27th and 29th here. So the day before for you guys. And it would be sort of an afternoon type of timing. It's only 4-hour sessions, but we're actually talking about, it's called Exhausted to Empowered, addressing the unspoken issues faced in nursing. And this particular, they're just 2 short little seminars, but one's on courageous conversations and how to have them. And the second day is courageous conversations looking at grief. And so we're just sort of unpacking these issues that are common for people that actually are not spoken about, but how to actually use them so that we can be more empowered and move away from just feeling exhausted and as though we have no choice.
And as our listeners can tell, whether you're here in the United States or you're on the other side of the world in Australia, we have so much in common. And so to think that, well, can Lauren give me any information that, would work for me here? Absolutely, because we're all human. And as she talked about, we have those emotions, we have those feelings. And when you can listen to somebody else's story, share your words as well, we can all be a little bit happier each day. And I will tell everybody that I know there are some people who tell me, Karen, we don't need any more podcasts, but I'm going to tell you, if you want to share your story and want to be talking to other people, start a podcast. It can be very, very rewarding. And Lauren, I'm so glad that you showed up today and you were with us. What time in the day is it in Australia now?
Gosh, 7:45.
Okay.
So we started at 7 a.m. here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was 7 a.m. there, 5 p.m. here. So difference of a full day, but you know what? We got it together. And I know Lauren and I were battling over those hours trying to figure out how we were going to do it. And we did. So thank you again for being with us. And we will have this up for everybody by the end of the evening in the United States.
Wow,
have a great day.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye now.